Hello there. Today, I'm working on a TRS-80 Model 100. Now, I didn't actually try to buy this thing. I got it in a bundle with my ThinkJet that I bought and I did a video on, and it's kind of funny that I'm the kind of weirdo that bought a set of computer hardware to get a printer instead of the computer. So I hadn't really looked into this thing, and it's just been sitting in the background. But one of the things that I knew about this was that the capacitors in them are known to go bad. So I recently opened it up and checked, and sure enough, the caps in mine have gone bad. So, since I run Caps Wiki, I went ahead and made a caps list that you can order, and we're gonna go ahead and recap the TRS-80 Model 100 that I have today. Now, if you're not familiar with the TRS-80 Model 100 here, this is a slab top computer. So this is I actually forget what processor this is. Can we see it really quick? Is it an 8085 there? Yeah, so it is a textbook 1980s microprocessor-based computer. There is a later revision of this exact computer called the Model 102. I don't remember exactly what the differences are, but I believe it has the Tandy branding instead of the Radio Shack branding there. That's clearly the superior badge. But this is an interesting little computer here. On the back, we have RS-232C, a printer port, and this has Tandy's weird, like, IDC printer connector. A phone connector that's probably for connecting into a phone line for dialing out. I'll come back to that in a second. And then the cassette port, which would just be used with any standard cassette interface cable. Then on the side, there is a barcode reader port, because this thing, it's weird. But one of the interesting things about this is that this is not a Radio Shack product. It is actually a Kyocera product, if I remember correctly. I forget exactly what their version of this was called, but they are the ones who OEM'd this. And one of the things that I find hilarious about that is that I also reviewed the Tandy WP2, and that was also not made by Radio Shack. What's funny is both of those had floppy drives, but the floppy drives were actually made by Brother. Now let's move on to the repair process. I have already opened it. There are two doors on the bottom. If we flip this over here, you'll see one of them is for the AA batteries and the other is for the expansion ROMs, or one of them is memory and the other is ROM, I think. Beyond that, there's just a handful of screws on the bottom, and then we can get inside. There's another layer of screws that holds on the logic board, plus this one that holds on this rubber standoff, and that I am going to have to remove again. There we are, and then we can just remove the logic board. Now on the front half, we have the display cable and then the two keyboard cables. Also, I think this is like the power LED or maybe the speaker power LED. Yeah. So those are cables you do need to disconnect to remove this. But yeah, hopefully none of these have an issue. They are all the same chip. It's a, I believe it's a shift register based display controller. Oh, I just noticed this does one of my favorite things. I love this PCB design tactic. These are chips installed upside down through a hole in the PCB. We can see by the traces going between them and the chip below them that it just made sense to be able to mirror the footprint. So installing the chip upside down let them do that. But that's enough just poking around here. We need to actually work on this. One last thing I want to do before that, though, there are these slide guard things that go over the switches. There's one on the switch over there, another one over there. Are those two the same? Oh, good, those are. And then there's the long one over there. But with those out of there, we can now move this on over to the electronics workbench and take a look at those capacitors. All right, with the board over here at the electronics bench, we can see just what kind of horrible stuff is going on here. So this is leaking capacitor corrosion there. I think there's another one up here. Yeah. So that one also got some stuff coming out of it. I can't remember if any over here were doing any of that. So Yeah, these are well-known and documented issues with the Model 100, and why you should pretty much consider every single one of these needing to be repaired. Additionally, I think it was right here, this was a battery. It might have been this one here that I removed. Mine, thankfully, only just started leaking and it didn't destroy the board, but if you are unlucky, that could also be a massive source of damage to the PCB, eating away the copper traces. But thankfully, mine wasn't so bad. But we're not going to give this much more of a chance. We're just going to go through. We're going to replace all of these electrolytics here. Some of these are actually kind of difficult to replace, and I'm going to need to get a different angle here to show you why. The thing that makes these capacitors difficult to replace is the height. Now that standoff that I mentioned that was still on the board is a good example of this. This touches the bottom of the keyboard, and that means we cannot go any higher than that. So we are limited to the height that the capacitors pretty much currently are when trying to find replacements. We're stuck around 12 millimeters. Going any taller risks bumping into the keyboard. And I don't think all of the capacitors I was able to find were like that. So we're going to have to try and bend them over onto their side and hope that we can squeeze them in there. So taking the damage into mind, we're definitely going to be replacing this and trying to clean it up some. I did not order replacement passives for things like the diodes. I'm just hoping that they aren't actually that bad, because overall I would say the PCB for mine here doesn't look too bad. I've definitely seen way worse damage from leaking capacitors than these. But I have ordered all the replacement capacitors I'm going to need for this, so we're going to get those installed. A special note here, just in case anyone is following along, these dark blue jacket caps, these 4 here, are actually non-polar capacitors. So they are unique in that there is not a positive and a negative side unless you have some weird applications, but for this it does not matter. So yeah, just note that those are non-polar. So if you're trying to replace them with just like random capacitors you have lying around, you probably can't. You're going to have to special order those. But that's enough talking about the problems. Let's go ahead and fix it. So I am going to start removing every single capacitor here, and then I will put the new ones on. First one out. Thanks, Radio Shack, for making those last two so easy by having no spokes on the via to connect to the ground plane. Those were so easy to remove. All right. I think that is every single capacitor removed. So that's all the electrolytics out, and we're going to be ready to put the new ones in. I do need to clean that up a little bit first, though. Looking at this area, it's a little not great there. I can see some corrosion along the copper edge there, and that was a trace. Ooh. And then over here, we have some more. Let me get in there, clean that a little bit, see if we can figure out what's going on. I'm going to need to investigate this a little more, I think. So I think I could barely see. This is connected to the same ground plane that this would be going to, and that kind of works. Yeah, that's okay. This should be a trace that's kind of S-shaped that goes down to this diode, and that works as well. Okay, so the traces are still fine. Over here, I really can't see where this goes, and this black part is heat, is like, oh gosh, I forget what the term is. There's the black plastic that's melted in place, the pegs, so I can't just pull this out non-destructively, and I can't tell where this trace goes. But yeah, other than the one trace that I can't see where it goes there, I think, oh, there we go. So yeah, that I guess that connects to the orange cable here, which is on the outside of the barrel jack? Hold on, that might make total sense. Yeah, okay, so that's negative power. Yeah, okay. So then in theory, no, it doesn't connect to ground. It must go through some nonsense over there. All right. So it looks like all of the traces are probably still good then. So I don't need to worry about the damage from the leaking capacitors too much. Well, since the traces all seem to be fine over here, I'm going to go ahead and install the caps. I actually attempted to do this already, but the very first one I picked up, it turned out I accidentally ordered a bipolar cap for a polar use case, which might have been okay, but thankfully, after looking through my previous parts for the VIC-20, I had some spare capacitors that are the exact same 1UF 50 volt rating, so we're going to go ahead and use one of those, but I will have to update the CapsWiki page with that now so that it doesn't cause anyone else a problem. All right, first one's in. Okay, 86. It's polar. Okay, good job me not ordering the wrong caps. C85. Okay, whoa, that's a tiny cap. Jeez. All right, 78. C52. All right, so this is C103. And this will let you see kind of how I was searching for capacitors for this, because that is a very weird aspect ratio for a capacitor. That kind of looks like a super cap. That's how those usually are. Yeah, that's a weird little squat cap there. C92. Next up is 82, which was one of the really bad leakers. 50, 54, 55, boom, boom, boom. This is 83 and 84. Ooh, I think these might be the ones that have to be folded over. So 83 was folded over to start. 84 was not. I am not 100% sure if these are too tall or not. So what I'm gonna do is 84 mounts upright. I'm gonna slide that in there, in the position that it would be mounted. And I'm gonna put the standoff for the keyboard next to it. Oh my gosh, it's close. That's the amount of height we're looking at with that cap versus the standoff. And again, this presses against the keyboard. And the reason why that's a problem is I assume that this is designed to rest on a flat spot. Yeah, actually, definitely. So here's the keyboard side, and where is it? Right there, you can see the marking where the rubber pad touches, and it goes in between the legs that stick down from the key switches on the keyboard. So if I have a tall cap, it could theoretically touch the legs from the keys and then short them. There's nowhere to fold that over. I mean, it would fit. Oh my gosh, do I do something super dumb? Bend the legs like this, then wrap them around to the side and then put it in. I think I'm gonna do it. All right, my solution to guarantee it fits is to mount it sideways in this horrible configuration, because now I can slide it in here like this. I hate it, but I think I need to do this. I am gonna put a big old piece of Kapton around the end of that though, so it doesn't potentially short against anything. Oh, this is awful. Not my finest work, but there were not a lot of choices. This one's meant to mount sideways, so it's gonna look much more normal. All right, all that's left are the bipolars that go along the serial port. And that is fully recapped. Okay. Just ignore that one. All right, we are ready to test this out. So I'm gonna take the screen setup over here and I'm gonna get this thing reconnected. One part of the keyboard matrix and the other. And if I remember correctly, these are an actual pain in the butt to plug and unplug. So I'm gonna try to make sure those are fully in there. Good. And then the display here. All right. And now I'm gonna flip this over like this. And I'm gonna attach clips to the positive and negative battery terminals. And we're gonna power this thing from my bench power supply just to make sure that it's working. I already have the voltage all set up for this. Let's see what happens. Enabling power output. And I have no idea how to turn it on. On-off switch is here. It's not pulling any current, so that's good. But why is it not? Oh, there's the other switch too, which is for the internal battery, I think. It won't turn on without that set. So if I flip this, I saw the light blink. Ah! Ha ha! It works! Score! Okay, excellent. I can adjust the contrast here to be more legible. Oh, beautiful! All right, I'm gonna enter basic. Print. Let's turn off numlock. Print. Let's make the P key work. Ruh-roh. No, there it eventually worked. Okay. All right. Some of these keys are going to need a little bit of exercise, it seems, but boom. We got this. Yeah! Turn it off. Oh, excellent. All right. Well, with that, we just need to put it back together now. All right. We're going to go ahead and reassemble this now. The thing that happened there where it was weird to try and get it to turn on is related to the battery that was removed. Normally the internal battery would be used to hold programs and other settings and stuff, while the machine has the AA's removed, but I totally removed that battery and I do not plan on putting it back. So my machine's always going to be a little weird now because of that. So that's just something I'm going to have to deal with, but I would much rather never have to worry about there being a battery in there again. So I'm not going to sweat that. All right. The final sandwiching. I'm just kind of amazed that this thing's actually going to work. All right. Are you kidding me? Okay, that's got to be the cable, right? Like, I pinched something. There's no way that just failed. You know what? I like the line. It adds character, okay? Things that aren't imperfect aren't unique. This is unique. So, yeah, I would guess now that it is probably the Z-conductive strip in there. We'll have to look into that. That's fine. Okay, good. It did not die. I like it when things don't die. Hello again. This is the day after I got the TRS-80 Model 100 working, and I've spent a little bit more time getting to know it because I've absolutely never used one before. Although I have more experience with this than I realized, because apparently the Tandy WP2 that I reviewed a while ago shares a lot more DNA with this thing than I realized on the software side, at least. When we look at the software options on the Model 100 here, the text, telecom, address, and schedule functions were all available on the Tandy WP2 and function basically identically. The real star of the show here is the basic interpreter. Now, before we continue here, one other thing I want to mention about this is the viewing angle. This is truly a laptop. If you try and view this thing directly straight on, you'll notice that the display fades quite a lot. And adjusting the contrast only gets you so far because the back becomes dark before you really get a clear image here. But when you tip it as if you were looking down at your lap and adjust the contrast, you get a much better image. You really are meant to look at this thing at an angle as if it was sitting on your lap. So trying to do it straight on does not work well. So I'm going to be propping this thing up in the back to try and maintain a good angle for the camera here as I use this. Now, I want to compare this one more time to the WP2 here because the display is both inferior and superior to the WP2. It is only 40 characters across, but it is the same 8 lines tall. However, unlike the WP2, this has graphics capabilities. So if I tell it I'm going to print a line, perhaps I should disable the numpad. If I'm going to print a line of text, I can create a string of graphics characters that are unique. You would have to probably look at the manual to figure out what all is available, but you can also hold Graph and Shift to get yet another set of graphics characters. And with that, you can create much more advanced visuals on here than the WP2 could ever hope to do. With this level of flexibility and functionality, this thing still has a thriving software scene, and someone has even made a demake of Baldur's Gate 3 for it. Now, the basic programming process is pretty much what you would expect. Print, we'll do the classic hello world here, and then we will do a line 20, go to 10, and then we can run the program and get it to print over and over again. When you have a program that does not suspend execution like this, you have the pause break key here to be able to stop it. And I think we may have to press it. No, I'm not exactly sure how we properly end this. Maybe shift break. There we go. So we can control the program running like that. But the other keys here are also interesting. Now, you may have noticed the other function keys here. And to see what these do, you have to press the label key. So that'll actually tell you. Unfortunately, they're kind of slanted. So F1 is here, F2 there, F8 all the way over there. I'm used to this kind of thing with the HP computers that I typically use, but they also do a better job of aligning the keys to the display usually. So this is a little bit confusing trying to line things up. I am constantly pushing the wrong button because it's under the word and then not having what I expect to happen. Generally though, F8 is usually the menu key to get out of whatever program you're in, but which program you're in is what dictates what the keys do. So if we go into, let's just make a new file here really quick in the text editor. If we go to label here, we can see F8 is menu, but now we have a find key over here. And we can also copy, cut, and select text. We can't paste through those function keys because that has a dedicated key. But now that we are in a text editor, let me go ahead and try this thing out for a little bit. I'm still having a little bit of trouble with my keyboard. I have exercised all the keys, and that helped a lot to get them working. I assume with more use, the probably small amount of corrosion on the contacts would clean up. These appear to be mechanical out switches. I haven't looked it up or attempted to pull a key off. I don't think I'm going to do that right now either. I do have some cleaning I need to do in this system, but this does not appear to just be adhesive, so I'm not sure what's going on with this. So I'm gonna have to take this thing apart again to clean it at some point, and I'll look into cleaning the keyboard at that time. Clearly I'm not done with it anyway, since it looks like I'm going to need new Z-conductive strips for the display. So another repair session is definitely in the future for this thing. Now, I mentioned that the display is only 40 characters, the WP2's is 80, which is nice, but the characters being so much physically larger on here really makes up for the fact that the LCD is a little more difficult to see. I actually think I would prefer to write on the 40 character display here than on the 80 character display on the WP2. The lighting is a lot more forgiving with this size of display, and the background not being as green, I don't know how to put it any other way, it's not as noticeable, makes it a lot easier to see as well. But that is it for our typing test here in the text editor. We can go ahead and save this. Actually, that saves a new file. I think if we just go back to the menu here, we will have this file, bingo, there, and that's all we need. You actually have to delete a file by going into basic and then running the kill command, and then you need to put the name of the file in quotes. It's kind of strange. Basic kind of doubles as the command line interpreter for this thing, which is kind of cool because it does feel a lot more like a computer in that way, but also weird that it's like this split between a file manager and programs, but still needing the command lines. It's just weird. You would definitely need to memorize a lot of commands to know how to use this thing, which is kind of the same problem the WP2 had with the many weird shortcuts that weren't labeled. So like the WP2, I wouldn't call this thing beginner friendly because you are going to need to read through the manual to figure out how to use it. Now, I'll wrap this up by mentioning Telcom, which I would like to demonstrate, but again, this is not a fully in-depth video on this thing. Really, I'm just happy to have got it working. But Telcom, like on the WP2, would allow you to use the machine as a full terminal after you configure these serial settings, and it allows you to transfer files to and from another Model 100, and it probably lets you do it to an actual computer, but again, really this thing shares so much with the WP2. I keep mentioning it because the experience with that machine just directly translates here. If you want to send files to a desktop, I suspect you're going to need to convert them from the DO file type to a DA file type, which de-tokenizes it and puts it into standard ASCII text. I don't know how to do that here yet, and I'm sure if I read through the manual I could figure it out, but that's just the kind of thing you'd need to be aware of. But I'm not connected to a computer, so I'm going to have to break out of the terminal, and then we can go back to the menu. Overall, I am quite excited to finally have a working Model 100. I'm not done with it yet, and this is not a full look at what this thing can do. I still need to get software onto it and spend a little bit more time with it. But based on my initial impressions with this machine, I can understand why it was kept around for so long and why it was so popular. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look at repairing a TRS-80 Model 100 and my initial first impressions with it. Unfortunately, they are all going to need repaired now. The capacitor problems and the battery are well known and documented to be issues with these things. So yeah, every single one of these is going to need that treatment. Again, I'll link the CapsWiki page down below. I need to fix that one capacitor I got wrong still, but I'll get onto that as soon as I'm done recording here. But hopefully that should help people fix these themselves as well. For me, I do have some more to do with this machine. I definitely need to learn how to use that Rex CPM module, so there will probably be more on the channel with it in the future. If you want to be notified when that happens, you may want to subscribe. And if you want to help support the channel, you can find me on Patreon. But for now, that's it, and I'll see you next time.